One takes up.
From the news center outside the city of Chicago in the great Midwest, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on The Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt. Here's our headlines. Alien stock is on a collision course with the tiny outpost of Rachel, Nevada in less than a month. The festival, born out of the Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us Facebook phenomena, is scheduled to begin getting everyone parked and situated September 19th, with the event running September 20th until noon on September 22nd. What alien stock actually will entail, though, is still anybody's guess. Hosting several thousand people in the desert will require a lot of waste management. Organizers are still seeking money for essentials such as staff, security, emergency medical services, and portable toilets. Rachel, Nevada has 56 year-round residents, and aside from the Little Alien, a small motel, bar, and restaurant, the nearest infrastructure of any kind is 45 miles away in Ash Springs. So attendees will be on their own for, well, virtually everything. As for water, the festival website claims that there is a well in Rachel, but it's soliciting funds for the equipment needed to process that water for use in hydration stations. Some of the only concrete information involves what you cannot bring to alien stock: glass, drones, non-service animals, and backpacks are prohibited. Without mentioning specifics, the site forbids weapons of any kind being brought into Rachel. If any weapons are found during inspections, it states you will be forced to turn around and leave. So apparently there will be inspections that would require inspectors. Lots of inspectors. Among other warnings, attendees are encouraged to bring plenty of cash for food and other vendors because cellular service is spotty and credit card readers may not work. Source: the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And Europe is sending an alien hunting camera to Mars. The red planet may be a drop in our immense cosmos, but Mars has always been a key place of curiosity when it comes to alien life. And now, a high-tech camera could solve the age-old question, is there or has there ever been life on Mars? In 2021, the European Space Agency's ExoMars rover is due to land on the planet. The Space Agency's camera actually consists of 3 cameras. 2 wide-angle devices will take panoramic images, and a filter wheel will enable them to image in 12 different wavelengths. A high-resolution camera will take further images in full color. A representative from the space agency said, quote, "We cannot wait to see the very first 360-degree panoramic view of Mars that we take, and it certainly will be an image we will cherish for life and probably put on our refrigerator door." Source: CNN. And let's slide right into this useless Stranger Than Fiction fringe fun fact. Captain Crunch's full name is Horatio Magellan Crunch. This has been the Stranger Than Fiction News on the Fringe FM. Again, I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-drift.
Yes, nice to be in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and welcome back to Lighting the Void, live on the Fringe FM. It is Monday night, August the 26th, in this year of 2019. Peter Moon joins us tonight to discuss further about what's going on behind the closed doors of the government and more. This is our second guest within this realm, and Peter Moon is here. We're going to be discussing time travel, Project Montauk, a little bit about L. Ron Hubbard and Aleister Crowley, and there's honestly no telling where this is going to go from here, because Peter has discussed a vast array of topics when it comes to these things, even things like out-of-the-body travel and more. So really looking forward to this. That's coming up in just a moment. This show is brought to you by GetTheTea.com. Make sure you go to GetTheTea.com. Get some of that super strength tea, get yourself cleaned out, and also get yourself protected from all of the intruders and all this stuff they're spraying us with. Also, AncientLifeOil.com, the best CBD oil on the planet, and PrepareWithTheFriends.com. If you would like to support the show, we could really use it. We're in one of those times where we could use it. So if you can, and you could swing it, just hit the donate button there on the website. It should be at the bottom right at lightingthevoid.com. Also, there is a event that's happening in Sedona that's one of our hosts is hosting, and it's called the Transcendence Event, and that is in Sedona, Arizona. And if you go to sci-spy.tv/events, you sign up for that, and you put in the code LTV, that's going to get you $25 off. And probably the biggest thing I'm excited about is UFO Seekers is back. I can't wait to see what they're going to come up with. Season 4 is coming out. Head over to UFOseekers.com for the latest, when they're going to be putting that stuff out. Also, YouTube.com/UFO Seekers and at UFO Seekers on Twitter. And if you've had a sighting you cannot explain, or you think you saw a UFO, give them a call at 661-UFO-7889. I want to thank Alana Freeland for coming on the show last week. Even though we had that little event with the lightning, she's more than willing to come back. And we're going to, I think when we have her back, we're going to talk a little bit more Steiner, right? In the eighth sphere, just like she said she wanted to. And all of you guys for your support. I get a lot of emails over the weekend too that just keep me looking forward to this. All right. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. Anything you can do, leave a review, hit me up, let me know. I love that stuff. So let's get into this, right? Peter Moon was born and raised in California, and he's primarily known for his investigation of space-time projects. Now, these concern projects in the past, present, and future that control both time and perception of time. An avid reader as a young man, he studied creative writing and literature and was particularly interested in both the scientific extrapolations of science fiction as well as the high adventure of what it provided. Now, Peter went out on his own in 1983 and moved to Long Island, where his unique background enabled him to forge an association with the scientist Preston Nichols, one of the world's foremost experts in the world of electromagnetic phenomena, who had been involved in strange experiments at the Montauk Air Force Station on Long Island, which included the manipulation of time. Now, their collaboration in writing the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, and its subsequent sequels have now reached legendary proportions, and that's at skybooks.usa.com. Another website I want to tell you for reference tonight is timetraveleducationcenter.com and skybooks.usa.com. Thank you so much, Peter, for coming on Lighting the Void. I really appreciate you being here, man.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
I am just now scratching the surface of these subjects, and the reason why is, and I told you this before the show, it's almost like I know this stuff has been going on, and I don't know to what extent. I know everybody throws a lot of information at me in the chat rooms and email and stuff, and they want to talk about these things. And it's just, we get told so many stories, right, that we really don't know what's going on. So we turn to people like you, a person that has done extensive research. And from my understanding, you've just been in Romania for some time, right? Is that correct?
I have been back about 9 days. I was in Romania for 2 weeks at the beginning of August.
If you don't mind me asking, what was your research involved with out there? Is that okay to ask?
Well, certainly. It's I haven't said a word about it publicly. It was one of my most incredible trips to Romania, which involved, every year, practically every year, I go to Romania the first week of August, and I teach at a camp called Atlanticron. It's in the southeast part of Romania on the Danube. It's in a little island where it was started out as a science fiction camp. The same year communism fell, 1989. It started before communism fell. And that camp has a lot of interesting information flow through it. It attracted, in 10 years after its inception, a scientist named Dr. David Anderson, whose first order of business when he got back to the States, he was living on Long Island at the time, was to go out of his way to meet me and tell me he wanted me to get to the camp. So they had the 30th anniversary of the camp this August. I felt it was important for me to attend. I went by myself. I was the only American there, save for Heather Caton, the president of the World Genesis Foundation, which I'm also a board member of, and it was her first time back to the camp in a few years. So most of the time I was by myself, surrounded by Romanians, and had a wonderful trip. After Atlanticron, I always make it a point to take a sacred journey to Transylvania, which was the sacred heart, sacred capital, the sanctuary of the ancient people of Transylvania, known as the Dacs or the Dacians. So that's been a whole huge influence in my life and in my journeys. Where I went specifically this year was to an area called Choklavina Cave. I was in pure nature for 3 days. And I can't tell you how profound and beautiful and regenerative it was to be not only in nature, but to be in that particular nature, which that cave is where they discovered one of the oldest human skulls on record, certainly in Eastern Europe, and some 33,000 years old. And it's also, it's very funny, the perspective when you're in nature, because, I would have some contact on the internet a little bit while I was over there. And I see that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. And at first I think it's somebody posting a joke on Facebook. And then I kind of feel like Charlton Heston in the Planet of the Apes movie when he's pounding his hands on the ground in front of the Statue of Liberty and saying, "God damn you all to hell." In other words,
right. Yeah.
Here's they somehow, how could Jeffrey Epstein be dead? It's like, it's like too predictable. You never thought it would happen. It's too predictable. But I was away from all that stuff. And when you come back to America and you see not just the people pitching conspiracy theories about Epstein and stuff, you see the diatribe about, Democrats and Republicans, liberals and patriots, or whatever you want to call them. And it's all madness. It's all madness. And it has so little to do with nature. Nevertheless, that's the state of mind that human beings live in. And it was such a contrast. I can keep that 3 days of nature with me, at least for the rest of the year until I go back.
Yeah, that makes sense. But just being in places like that does give you in my opinion, a larger awareness of natural law and what's going on, and kind of grounds you and brings you down to center to see the bigger picture, so to speak, sometimes, right? I mean, that's what that's for. I love to do those types of things too. But I have when it comes to things like time travel, Peter, I have never even remotely wanted to touch this subject because there's been so many things that don't add up to me when it comes to people like, what's his name? John Teeter and all this stuff. And then you got all these YouTube people coming out and, taking lie detector tests. And then they come back and say, well, that was a big spoof. I sometimes wonder, how much of a distraction that all is, if the government's involved with these people putting out disinfo. And then I look at what you're talking about and how time travel has to do with more than just some time machine. It has a lot more to do with mathematics and our perception in our mind. And this kind of starts to make sense to me. I don't want to speak for you, but what do you think it is that we've missed about this whole time travel concept? One of the biggest things.
Well, you're very right that the subject gets littered. And one very important lesson I would like to impart, and this is not something new that I've come up with I've been, spouting this from time to time for many years. But in the last 6 weeks, I've been spouting it a lot. There is a tradition that many people have heard of, alchemy, which is a very rich tradition. Mm-hmm. And it's both literal, meant to be interpreted literal, transmuting base metals into gold, and it's also metaphorical, whereas transmuting base metals into gold can be a metaphor for taking the lower elements of life and transmuting them into the higher. And what I would say is that, of course, in life, what you want to do is transmute the lower into the higher. Some people, want to take lemons and turn it into lemonade, sour lemons into nice, tasty lemonade. Right. Now, one of the predisposition of human beings in general, you say you just get them in a crowd. You don't necessarily need to have agent provocateurs or conspirators. Human beings left unto themselves are very predisposed towards turning gold into base metals. And you have an excellent example of that in the stories told in the New Testament. You want to take, the best that so-called divinity has to offer and, kill it off, so to speak. If you want to look at it from a Christian lens, you don't have to. I don't insist upon that at all. Sure. But that's just a very good illustration of how human beings will take the best of what is offered and turn it into inquisitions and genocide and all the nonsense that's been perpetrated in the name of Christianity. So this is a problem when it comes to any subject, whether it be time travel, UFOs in particular. UFOs generate a lot of negative, or what, to use a Kabbalistic term, qliphothic energy, stuff that is, right, basically worthy of the abyss, and it'll just drag you down into there. Much of the occult, the paranormal, is like a seductress or a siren, to use the term from the Odyssey, to suck you into something not so good. And this is a I guess when you go to study whether it's the occult, whether it's the paranormal, these are booby traps that are there for the person. So and I see this particularly with all the fallout we see from Scientology, especially in the recent publicity it's garnished in the last 5 or so years. It's so negative that the experiences people have had are so incredibly negative. And you hear about the negative experiences. Certainly, I wouldn't say they're all negative, but you hear about the negativity. And this applies to the occult. It applies to the National Football League, where so many people come out of there physically debilitated and sometimes debilitated in other ways.
It's kind of like what happened with Andrew Luck, right? He just retired. He said, I can't do this no more. You would think a guy as young as he is wouldn't retire and say, I'm in pain. I don't want football in my life anymore. It's literally sucked the life out of him. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And of course, I always noticed with that individual, his name was Luck. He had a lot of good luck.
Yeah.
Now he's having the other side of luck, which is bad luck. And you have a character like Tom Brady, who has navigated his way towards incredible legendary success, still playing at age 43 or thereabouts, and is, as he said, he's the slowest one on the field when he plays. Probably the weakest too. He probably could not beat up the kicker, but it doesn't matter. He is, he's able to navigate through, one of the toughest professional sports, and literally be a hero and know what the hell he's doing. So in other words, life is not, success is not for everybody. But, you have to know who you are. What I was going to get back to about Scientology is anything, whether it's the occult or Scientology or whatever it is, it's a mirror of what's inside of you.
Right.
So you could walk into a dark alley full of criminals, and or a prison, and depending on what's inside of you is how you're going to interact and survive with those people. So life becomes a reflection of who and what you are. And of course, if you're in a field that is playing with the human mind or the spirit, then you really get tested. If you're just going to go work in a factory, you might not typically won't be tested, although it can happen there too. So, you have to really look inside of yourself and look into your own heart, your own intentions before you go seeking out some of this stuff. It's very important. Some people have recommended that one seek out and get therapy just to clear themselves out before they engage in a path of esoteric pursuits.
Absolutely, yeah. We talked about that earlier last week with Michael Dane, how Israel Regardie wrote in his books, The Golden Dawn, of the original order. They wanted their initiates to go through therapy. And typically some Jungian type of therapist, right, before they take on this work.
That's the exact person I didn't quote, but you're quoting him for me. Israel Regardie, who said that, yes.
Right, yeah, and it was important. And, we've talked about magic and the occult, my fascination with it, others' fascination with it on here. But the more studies I've done, especially with like Crowley and what was going on with British intelligence and all that, and then when he went into the Golden Dawn, it seemed like the Golden Dawn was fine. There was some type of outer order that led into deeper Rosicrucian orders. They had a process before you could actually get into this alchemical stuff that you were supposed to do internally or externally, however people want to look at it. And then Crowley shows up, and it just seems like everything went to hell in a handbasket. Now, the story doesn't pan out that way, but that's the common denominator of what happened, what I'm seeing. There was a lot of crazy stuff that went on there back in like 1890s, 1888, and when all that stuff happened through the 1894.
Sort of like a hornet's nest and not only do you have hornets, you have wasps, you have yellow jackets, and you've got all this stuff going on. And, it's sort of like moths to a flame. And I think I can only think back to my days on the Apollo, L. Ron Hubbard ship, and you go there and you have very close quarters because you're on a ship. It's about the size of a football field, but you've got over 300 people. Then the quarters are very close, and you're mixing with all sorts of international, people from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, UK, and then you have a smattering of people from Europe, Germans, whatever, Scandinavia, Denmark, and you get a real cross culture. And with this cross culture, you have a completely different attitude. And sometimes, particularly the people from England, would have these old English attitudes and all the energy that they would bring with them. And, and then who and what you meet and how you get treated is so highly selective and personal as to your experience. I could tell you people that I had good experiences with that other people had horrific experiences with, and maybe it's vice versa. But you walk, well, no matter where you go, you walk away with an experience. To get back to what you're saying about Crowley, back in the day, he had, yes, he was a complete wild card, who chose the mantle of the Antichrist. So he's stirring up energy that most people wouldn't even think to stir up. And you will find that there are degrees that people might get, and whether it's a Masonic order or a secret Rosicrucian order, that you might get a different degree or set of papers than me or than the guy down the street. And they're not all consistent. And sometimes they're deliberately withheld. It's a funny game. It's a game of like I forget what they call that game when they're playing them on the streets in Manhattan, where they got these three, they're putting something under a cup and they're spinning it around. They used to play that on the streets in Manhattan. They put and you play it for money. It's kind of like, what are you getting? This is something that's very important. There are three aspects. This is something else I've been saying a lot lately to an individual, whether he's going after time travel, whether he's going after, transmutation, transhumanism, any sort of thing. He has to have intelligence, but intelligence is not good enough. He also has to have access. Access and intelligence are good, but you also have to have fortune or fate. You have to have luck, which luck is a component of. So all of these three elements. And if you don't have all three, you're not going to be successful. And if you're lacking in intelligence, I don't mean completely lacking, or in access, or in good luck, you have to cultivate each one. So this is what you're dealing with. If you don't have good fortune, generally haven't, you have to study good fortune and cultivate it, and so that it becomes an element in your life. And of course, these things are expressed in the tarot as the Wheel of Fortune, and you can study that card and all the aspects of it just to get the archetypal understanding and cultivate it into your life. There's a great example of Aristotle Onassis, who became one of the richest men in the world. He got his start in Buenos Aires. He was working as a telephone switchboard operator. And because he was a switchboard operator, he could hear what was going on in the Buenos Aires Stock Exchange. And he could hear, he was getting inside information. And he would then go and invest in the right stocks. And he accumulated quite a fortune. And of course, insider trading is illegal in the United States. I don't think it's illegal anywhere else. Certainly not in countries like Argentina. So I don't think what he did was illegal, but he had access because he was a switchboard operator. And I would also say that telephone supervisors, I don't know how it works anymore used to be AT&T. They had a tremendous amount of power to listen on what people were saying.
Big time now. Really
track information, and there were certain rules they could do and couldn't do. So it's like access, is just such a key thing. So these are three fundamentals of life: good fortune, access, and intelligence.
Fantastic. So this is what I wanted to kind of get into. Like, it's hard to get into the bigger picture of things because it gets labeled conspiracy so fast. Well, it's just a conspiracy and you're just putting stuff together. Well, I want to look at this. I want to look at time travel as it relates to our minds, as it relates to perception. Everybody likes to talk about the Mandela effect, but when you really get into the study of hermetics, you start to see that the mind really there's a lot more to it than what we've been told. And I think that is where a lot of the stuff is happening when it comes to government cover-ups, projects, and secret things. We do have to take our break here, but you guys, if you want to put any questions in, you can put them in the chat room. We'll also open the phones up here in just a little bit, but you can go to the Fringe FM, just hit chat, and it'll take you to our Discord server. We'll be right back, guys, with Peter Moon. Don't go anywhere.
listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
I know we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
This is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? Cannasense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. Cannasense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the cost, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and Cannasense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied, but you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with, you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Every Saturday at midnight here on the Fringe FM, you can join me, Stephen Canby, the host of the Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of The Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited.
on
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Tonight we are joined by Peter Moon. The website is skybooksusa.com, also timetraveleducationcenter.com. So if you're listening on the web or your phone, you can go to those websites for reference. And before the break, Peter and I were talking about the mind, and I was asking him about, what is it about time travel that we're missing? And there wasn't a real direct answer, but I think what you were saying, Peter, is very important. As you want to discuss this trip that a person takes as they start going down these roads with wherever you go. You could approach it from, like, say, you've had experience with going through Scientology. Other people, they get into the occult and they get into secret societies and they start learning bigger fundamentals about the mind. But this is important. This whole alchemical process that you brought up earlier is important so that we can become to a bigger understanding of what maybe the mind really is. And then we can look at how we're being manipulated. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, as I was saying while we were talking during the break, the mind is like a currency, because it is our currency. We use our mind to function with. And the mind is like a currency that's double-sided, because a coin has two sides. It has heads and it has tails, or the equivalent thereof. And this was the whole basis of the daemon. The daemon is double-sided, and currency is double-sided. If you study the tarot and the pentacles, which represent also coins, you have positive aspects and negative aspects of coins or materialism. But in the sense of a currency, the mind being a currency, it can be like gold, because, the mind can do incredible things. We all either have experienced it or witnessed it. The mind can also be viewed as something that is extremely limited, because all of our perceptions are filtered. They're filtered to the point where we're seeing what amounts to a very regulated regimen of existence, a perception that's very orchestrated by seeing, a picture every 1/25th of a second or thereabouts, and with all of this stuff. And when somebody takes a hallucinogenic drug, all of these filters is gone. So they not only see more, they see all sorts of implications of what is, isn't, or might be. And this can, of course, drive people quite mad. Right. But the human mind is a filter. And to the degree it's a filter, it is a sensor into and of itself. So when you talk about conspiracy, the biggest conspiracy is your own mind and its filters. And so in other words, you can try and struggle against the conspiracies of the world, whether it be 9/11 or the JFK assassination. But the conspiracy in your own mind is far more productive to work on. And, without driving yourself crazy, of course. And what is it that you're cutting yourself off from, without undermining yourself. I'm not suggesting that somebody go off into a monastery, although some people will.
Sure.
Maybe some people should. But, it's good to keep a tangible existence, meaning a job or an endeavor that supports your wherewithal, to to do such. But yeah, the human mind is, it's both a blessing and to some degree a limitation. So this is what we're struggling with when we're trying to perceive. On the subject of time travel, our whole perception is regimented into seeing three dimensions. The fourth, and time does represent a consecutive series of events that is just like a film. Like if you're watching the frames of a film, frames of a film are two-dimensional, showing on a screen. In reality, is a series of events that goes out in space, one event after another, and it's moving into a territory that we do not see with our human eyes. We'd have to back up and see it in something that's not unlike a projector. We'd have to be literally outside of our reference frame of our body and our typical mind to watch this stuff. So in other words, people have out of body experiences.
Yes.
You could go into an out of body state where you're actually watching different frames or different events take place, as much as the supermind could imagine. And this all we can only view it as an imagination unless we can get outside of ourselves and look into exploring the space. Of course, the problem there becomes we're dealing in a different level of metaphysics. We're moving into the realm of what is generally relegated to angels, principalities, sometimes referred to or perceived as demon or jinn, the controlling reference frames of the higher echelons of existence. We're living in, the building. We're living in the building, and we have a supervisor of the building that makes sure that we don't violate the rules, whether it be regards to electricity, plumbing, or garbage. And that's what we're dealing with the human limitation. When we get into time travel as a subject, we're moving outside of the building. We're dealing with super intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're talking about alchemy, there is a character. Because some of the work I published, some of the most interesting chapter I've ever read in my entire reading is the book Transylvania Moonrise, which is the second book in the Transylvania series, not written by myself, written by this Romanian author Radu Cinemar. And it's a book about he meets this alchemist. He's a real character too, that I was supposed to meet some 10 years ago. I still might meet him, but it was he belongs to it. They said he was in his 60s, but he looked like he was 28 or something. And it's literal physical immortality. Doesn't mean you can't be killed, but it means you can maintain the body. Now, this particular book or whatnot is talking about the prospect of living a very long life.
Yeah, a prolonged life. All right.
Well, exactly. And so when we're talking about getting outside of the reference frame of human existence, there is this idea that there are people out there, but per the tradition of alchemy, and you can look this up on, I think I first heard it in Manly P. Hall, one of his lectures, is that when the alchemist is bogged down or impeded in his research, he can't get any further, he's been working a long time, he's at his wit's end. He said it's legendarily what will occur is this character will appear out of nowhere, and his name is Elias Artista. And, he is, I guess, sort of angelic, or what does this mean? It's a character who appears and gives you a clue, tells you what to do. It's like a spiritual inspiration. He talks to you, gives you your insight, your light bulb goes off, and then he's gone. But now you can go on with your work. And I was once doing a podcast with Dr. David Anderson, and I brought this thing up to him, because he's researched and developed a time reactor, which is actually a time machine, slows and speeds up time and can take you to the past or the future. And I said to him, I told him a legend of Elias Artista, and I said, have you ever had such an experience like this when in your research into time? And he says, no comment. No comment, which says a lot. He'd say, no, I've never had anything like that.
Now, yeah. Is this the same thing as what they call like the secret chiefs or the hidden masters that end up showing up in their lives as you progress through your work, or is this something different?
Well, I could say that you could liken it to that, because the secret chiefs, and of course the secret chiefs just refer to these 12 secret chiefs that rule the universe, or, hidden, and they will speak to you. And as Aleister Crowley says, don't ever try and contact the secret chiefs. When they're ready to contact you, they will do so. And my relationship with David Anderson is a little bit like that. He will contact me when he's ready to. That doesn't mean that I can't absolutely get through to him when I absolutely need to. But, there's something else going on there. But and I think it's in his book, The Confessions, Aleister Crowley identifies the secret chiefs as none other than the 12 signs of the zodiac. In other words, you will encounter Scorpio, you will encounter Leo, you will encounter Libra, Aries, Pisces, and so on. And this might sound disappointing to some, but all of those archetypes, which do, they form a circle. And these things were studied for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
And the person who would have the most knowledge of them was the vizier or the wizard. That the vizier is the root word of wizard. And they were the vizier is where we get the word advisor. And the advice to the king or chieftain was by the vizier who knew the stars. He knew the cycles of the stars, watched for years and years and years. And of course, our knowledge of the stars, collectively, the knowledge of the stars was always in a special priest cult. And of course, that was also subject to manipulation and whatnot. But there was wisdom in these cycles. So basically, when you are, and of course, astrology is a completely arbitrary discipline. It's like you could. The Chinese have a different zodiac, and it's all about looking at the universe and what's around you and correlating it, trying to get a reference point. Just like if you're in a crowd, you have to start picking out patterns of movement and patterns of energy to negotiate your way through the crowd or traffic. I've been in New York City traffic where it takes you 45 minutes to move a block, and we call it gridlock.
Yeah, that's frustrating. I bet.
And sometimes you can move, sometimes you can't. Every inch becomes more important than it would be otherwise. So it's like you negotiate your way through life with all of these cycles. And some of the cycles are pretty obvious, like the lunar currents, when to plant seeds, when to harvest, all of these things. And of course, based upon empirical observation, these things have a reference. So when we get to the secret chiefs, what are each one of these signs, and what do they mean, and how, in your understanding of them, can help you understand people and their functions and your own functions. And without even getting into the predictive aspects of it, just studying the archetypes of astrology, whether it be Chinese astrology, Vedic astrology, or the more Chaldean astrology that we're more familiar with in America. It's just so I mean, it's like, sounds simple, but what are the fundamental aspects of life? Astrology is the most complete certainly the oldest system of psychology in the world.
I was going to say that it's definitely the oldest thing that's been handed down since the beginning of time that we know of.
It's much more extensive. I would also say that astrology is the means, well, another word for it is horology, the study of time. Okay? Horology is sometimes considered the quantitative study of time. Astrology is the qualitative study of time because you're studying the timing of things. So it's a qualitative study. It's also what's known as a right brain study as opposed to a left brain study. Chronology would be the study of time in a linear version, whereas astrology would be the qualitative aspect. Horology would be the study of time in its totality, which is quantitative and qualitative.
Yeah, so you use horary astrology to study what's going to happen at certain times or birth charts and things like that. And then you have other type of astrology which studies like the archetypes and the symbols.
There's many different aspects with astrology, and some of them are so off the beaten path, and some people will swear by them. And but what's very important about the study of time is that the Greeks had two gods of time. One was Kronos, or Saturn, and he was, the Grim Reaper and everything else that time represented. He would eat his children, which is time does consume his children. There was another god, I think he was the offspring of Kronos, but I don't remember. And his name was Kairos, Kairos is one way to spell it. And Kairos was the god of qualitative time, and he was bald with a, strand of hair, sort of like a Hare Krishna,
Yeah.
And when he came by, you had to seize him by the hair because he was called opportunity. That when something came by, this was your opportunity. You grabbed it, you took it, and that was your ticket. So you have to, and this is where the phrase "seize the moment" comes from. Carpe diem. The thing that they say at graduation, seize the moment, take your opportunity, whatever it might be, because it's floating out there for you. And if you do not seize it, if you do not, ask the girl to go out with you to the prom or wherever, you missed your opportunity.
Right. I got what you're saying.
Yeah. And it may be, or it could be, writing that letter, applying for that job, and whatever it is, going to that school, getting that education. That is your moment. And it does not, the god of Kairos does not hang around. He comes, and you will seldom see him twice on the same subject.
People are taught that in magic too. When they use magic to try to manifest something with planetary hours and days and all this stuff. And if they, it'll come around once, and if they don't take it, then they missed it. Like if you guess and say, well, is that really, you got to take your opportunity while it's there, that kind of thing.
Yes. And the moment, what this does is the whole idea of getting you to focus on the moment, focus on the present. The present is a present if you can be there, and you're in there with the timing and flowing with the moment. And it makes life a lot more fun if you can actually participate in the moment. So when we talk about time travel, there is this technology out there, courtesy of Dr. David Anderson, that can literally slow things down and speed them up. The science, math, physics is explained for free on the Time Travel Education Center website. You can just have to put in your email, and you can access these videos. And it takes sometimes a bit of going through. I was just in Romania with my friend that I stayed with. He's a psychiatrist, and we were. He wanted to go over these with me personally, and he had some questions. And the main thing I had to point out to him was this: putting all this stuff together is like putting a blueprint. The blueprint in for a house, the blueprint is completely art. I mean, it doesn't exist. It's on a piece of paper. The blueprint has no. It's a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional situation, and you're using exact numbers. So when you go to measure out that beam, and it's supposed to be 8 feet, well, it might not be quite 8 feet, and there's little imperfections or gaps in a house. It's not perfect, but it serves the purpose. It builds the house. And so we don't need to get stuck in some of the laying the foundations of certain aspects. You're dealing with an abstract concept only to prove that time can itself be manipulated, which is a scientific fact, which we know from frame dragging alone. But when we're talking about, and the other thing was his son watched it, but his son's only 12. And I asked the son, what is your interest? And he says, physics. So I said, well, you want to watch this with your dad? We're going to be watching this. Do you want to come in and watch it? He goes, yeah. And he watched the whole thing. And he didn't say a word. I tried to get a word out of him, but he wouldn't say a word. He said he understood it all. I mean, his mind is young. It's not prejudice, and he just absorbed it. So it's time is, so you have this idea that time can be manipulated. But what is the access to David Anderson's time reactor? He says that other people are studying this in governments. How far along their research is, I can't say, because he hasn't told me. Some of it's very rudimentary, and some of it's very advanced. He said that India concerned him because they were sending drones into time. And every time you look at the timeline, let alone play with it, you're changing things irrevocably. And he's saying that this is extremely dangerous. For example, if you have a plant and you go back into time and kill the ancestor of the plant, you come back into the present, that plant will have different DNA. So you've changed it. It might be similar DNA, but somehow life has been reconstructed, as if you're, playing with Play-Doh, and you've gone back and changed this, and now you have to change this. It's a complex set or series of interdependencies.
Yeah, it's not like the movies like Back to the Future where they say, well, you've got to fix the timeline. Like literally the smallest thing can cause a cause and effect ripple that might not be fixable. It could be so complicated. It's hard.
I think you would find it very interesting if I parlay that into my recent trip to Romania, because I haven't, announced this to anyone yet. I was talking about being in nature and going to Choclavina Cave. Now, Choclavina Cave, as I was saying, is famous because it's got one of the oldest, it's famous to archaeologists and people like that, not only in Romania, but, in the world of archaeology, because it's, got one of the oldest human skulls. And it's really funny because I don't claim to be an expert on any of that, but I was looking on some website and they're saying is how there was evidence that there was murder going on or something because the skull was bashed in. But the people in the hills were telling me what that skull bashed in. Well, I didn't even know that the science was saying, oh yeah, there were murderers because the skull was bashed in. Well, the reason the skull was bashed in, they were telling me, was that they discovered a skull and there were miners that uncovered it. And the guy was just like a brute and he went and crashed the skull. He's like digging with a pick and he does it sort of like a kid destroying something. And it wasn't until they found out that they could get some, compensation for the skulls that they kept them, and then preserved them and gave them to the archaeologists. But apparently they gave them a a cracked skull that was done by a miner, and the archaeologists were looking at it as a murder scene, as forensics. And that was kind of amusing. Whereas the people in the hills are telling you what really went down, supposedly. However, when I was first brought there in 2014, when I happened to be visiting Transylvania, and I was with the woman who would become my wife and some of my friends from America, and this archaeologist who I had met the previous May. People at the hotel I stayed at had been trying to introduce me for a long time. Well, I got to talk to him for a long time in May. When I went back in August, he showed up and took me to Choclavina Cave, not because I wanted to go, but he thought I should see it. He thought it was interesting. He told us legends and, stories about it, none of which I found too compelling, but I'd been to the cave. The following year, in 2015, I was doing a podcast with Dr. David Anderson. I said, what can you tell me about Romania? And he said he would get back to me. And then when we did the podcast, he said, Choclavina Cave, there's an area in Romania called Choclavina Cave that has the biggest evidence of a time reactor discharge. And he eventually said that we found other areas where there was a discharge of a time reactor, but Choclavina Cave is by far the biggest and most significant. And they were able to determine this by a crystal structure that was in the cave. And I'm going to tell you the exact name of the mineral here in a second. It is called hydroxy. I don't know that I have it spelled right here.
Well, you know what? I'm a little bit over the break here. If we can.
Sorry.
That's okay. We can figure. No, you're all right. I wanted to do that because I wanted you to make your point there. But now that we're starting to get into the evidence side of this,
I'll get the name right when we come back.
Yeah, we're starting to get into the evidence side of how there might possibly have been time travel experiments done with this new concept that Peter's talking about, how we understand time in the mind and how it relates. And
this will get more interesting when we get back.
Yeah, we can even get more into that too. The call number is 1-800-588-0335. You can ask questions in the chat or text in as well. We'll be right back with Peter Moon.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Root, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Hey Google, I would like to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us, but I don't have time to read or go to school because I work all the time. What do you recommend?
Try listening to Lighting the Void. It's the best way to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. Besides, I happen to think Joe Roop is the most handsome voice in radio. Listen Monday through Friday 9 p.m. till midnight Pacific time on the Fringe FM. Plus, you will hear a bonus feature called The Stranger Than Fiction News. Reported by Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer. With all this information in one location, you are guaranteed to be more attractive to others in your social circle because you'll beam with intellectual wisdom.
Yeah, I think I'll try that.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheT.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheT.com.
This is Reverend John M. Polk. Please visit me at johnpolkmedia.com and visit my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on thefringe.fm.
Ever seen an extraterrestrial? It can be hard to believe they exist unless you've seen one for yourself. What if I told you I've seen them my whole life, but have never had a witness who shared the encounter with me? Now, what if I told you I saw 4 of them, 2 with blue skin, and there are over 20 witnesses to this CE5 event? My new book, The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, documents actual accounts from real witnesses, many of which have gone on record to attest to this otherworldly reality. Be a part of the quantum paradigm shift that is taking place right now. Go to johnpolkmedia.com to get your copy of The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, on sale right now at johnpolkmedia.com. That's JOHNPOLK media.com.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Tomorrow night on the program, we're going to be speaking with Jaap Van Etten. We're going to be talking about energy, the metaphysical energy, even crystal skulls, another first for the show. So make sure you come out tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight. That's when we air Monday through Friday night here on the Fringe FM. Tonight we're speaking with Peter Moon, and the websites for reference are timetraveleducationcenter.com and skybooks.usa.com. And earlier in the program, we were discussing the mind, a little bit of occult science, and how this time works along with mind, and the history of astrology, and a bunch of cool stuff. Now, in your research, you were discussing how that this crystal. Did you ever get the name of that?
Yes. Okay. So just to remind the audience, we're talking about this crystal structure that was found in Choklavina Cave by a team of scientists in 2006. The name of the crystal structure was hydroxylelestadite. That's hydroxy, Lellestadite, hydroxylelestadite. And this was confirmed in Choklavina Cave in Romania. They were using spectroanalysis to determine the microanalytical, structural, and vibrational aspects of this crystal structure. And for it to be formed like this, it requires a very high temperature to occur, 500 degrees centigrade, which is about 942 degrees Fahrenheit. We know from, that Ray Bradbury story, Fahrenheit 451 is the temperature when book paper catches fire. Well, this is twice Fahrenheit 451,
it's
Fahrenheit 942.
Yeah.
That might be a nice name for a title, Fahrenheit 942. It's about time. The only site where the crystal structure was formed in a very short time. So they know that the time was boom. And this occurrence, it says, includes a distinct enrichment of inorganic phosphate, PO4, and a complete absence of carbon trioxide, CO3. And this is a common and expected phenomena at discharge sites of space-time motive force. Discharge sites of space-time motive force. And this is now, so people understand space-time motive force is a force that occurs when a time reactor is juxtaposed with another time reactor. That time reactor could be the Earth itself, and it could be some celestial body. It's when you have two objects in space where frame dragging occurs, and they're juxtaposed under certain circumstances, you can have a discharge. And this is the way he discovered this. And my explanation of it here is rather crude and clumsy, but basically he found out that he was putting a certain amount of energy into the time reactor and more was coming out. He felt stupid. He said he had to study this, and he finally figured out that there's this force, that space-time motive force. This can solve the world's energy problems. He's got videos on YouTube explaining this completely scientifically. So basically what he's saying is that there was something that occurred in this cave. And he said it was either 200 or 2,000 years ago. I don't know why he said 200 or 2,000. What is the harmonic? And for some reason, I always sort of focused on the 200 because it was closer to us. But only on this trip did I begin to focus on the 2,000 and what that represented. And he said, and this was in a Skype presentation he did for my in-laws at an event they held on Long Island in 2017. He said, the most exciting discovery concerning Choklavina Cave has yet to be published. And he still hasn't revealed what that is.
Huh.
So he knew I was going there. He was even invited to go on this trip, but he didn't, which didn't surprise me. So I have taken, this was my fourth trip to the cave, and I was told when I arrived there last year was my third trip to the cave. And before I got there, my friends at Atlanticron, some of them had been to the cave. I had stirred up interest in the cave, and they went into, there's 3 caves there, at least 3 caves. The most, I guess, visible cave is the one that has got a huge entrance. You go in and it's filled with water. So you have to have boots or equipment to go into that cave. It's about 7 kilometers long. There's also, I discovered on my second trip to the cave, you walk up the mountain a little bit, and there is a mining entrance. There's some smaller entrances that a small dog could get through, but you can't get through them. Miners dug, and this was dug a long time ago, for whether they were trying to get bat guano for explosives or whatever they were trying to mine. Some say lapis lazuli. They went into the cave, and then there's a metal door. I could never get past the metal door, but we discovered it, and it was good. Now that's called Choklavina Dry. It's a dry cave. The other one is the wet. There is a cave at the top of the mountain that is, I think they call it the bear cave. It has a lot of bare bones in there. When you go into the dry Choklavina, and I have some pictures of this in video, but you can't distinguish it, where my friend told me that these are bare bones, but there's also giant bones of a giant human, because the femur is a human femur, they said. And they didn't touch the bones because they considered a cemetery, so they wouldn't mess with the bones or take them for samples. But they went into about 3 kilometers into the dry cave. But on this last visit, I think on my 3rd visit last year, we discovered a camp. And we made friends with the guy. That was a whole synchronicity in how we were even able to discover the camp, let alone meet the people. So I was able to this year, actually, a little bit last year, but more so this year, talk to the people in the area and learn from them. And that was my purpose. After being at the camp for about a couple hours, I was approached and said, how would you like to go to the cave tomorrow? I really didn't want to go in the cave because I'd been sick and I wasn't in shape. But I wasn't going to turn down an invitation like that. I said, yes, we would. So I went into that cave. We had equipment. We had neoprene, wetsuit, boots. Fortunately, there was one, I'm over 6 feet, so I was fortunately that he had one that would fit me. The rest of us were smaller. It was 4 of us that went inside the cave. And we had a hard hat, which was very important. And we're walking into the cave. We walk in about, it was over 100 yards. And then we had to go up a ladder, which was about 1 story high. And that was a little intimidating to me. But once I got past that, I started cooking. And this crystal structure I'm talking about, hydroxylelastidite, according to the reports, it said that it is in a alcove off the bivouac room. And what the hell's the bivouac room? I think that's where we went to, because the bivouac means a temporary encampment. In this room, it's not a room, it's an open space in the cave full of stalactites and stalagmites, and you see plenty of bats flying by and squeaking. And I think I was in that room. I think I was close to this actual mineral. I don't know it, but I suspect it. And I want to find out what the bivouac room is. However, I was in that cave for 5 hours, and it was quite an experience. And was I exhausted and tired? Yes, physically. There was water in there so we could drink. Our guide brought some chocolate with us, so when we got into this room, we could relax. We meditated for close to a half an hour, had the chocolate, got re-energized, and made it back. By the time we came out, it was completely dark. So that was quite an experience just to be in the cave. And then, of course, I was having a lot of dreams while I was there. And the dream I had after the cave was I was being presented to the Queen of England. And I was with about 3 other people who were nervous about the protocol, because she said, we've done this protocol before and we got to get the protocol right. And I'm not too worried about the protocol. And the Queen waves the protocol. She waves the protocol and she takes us into her chamber. It was only on my way back, as I was writing the dream down, that I realized this signified the Queen's chamber of the Great Pyramid.
Okay.
And then the next night, I was taken up. How'd you like to walk up a hill? I'll walk up a hill. It's about a half an hour. It's right before it's dusk. And I'm thinking like, okay, we'll go. And this was a very hard uphill journey. And I needed help to get up. It wasn't so easy for me. So I had one of the scouts helping me and spotting me. But I got up to the top and I was shown the whole overview of the area and how this area related to that area and how close everything was to certain area sites that I'm familiar with. I won't go into. But what I also learned, and from several people told me this, that this area of the cave has walls. There's walls and there's mountains, and it was an enclosed cave that had a lot of people in it about 2,000 years ago. Now, David had said this time reactor discharge occurred 200 or 2,000 years ago. Well, 2,000. If he's telling me 2,000 years ago from when he told me this, it's 2015. That was the year 15 AD. So we're right in the first century. And if you are to look at history, the timeline, first off, is all based on Christianity. But even the most devout Christian would tell you that the timeline is false, because the year zero, no theologian, fundamentalist, or anyone who believes in Christianity would tell you that the year zero is the year Christ was born. So we're already operating with a false timeline if you're a devout Christian. This is an empirical, inarguable fact. But how much has the timeline been altered? The history of this location in Transylvania is unknown. They know the history up to 44 BC pretty well. Burbista was a great Dacian warrior, and he was killed the same year as Caesar. The same year, 44 BC. He had Rome by the balls. Rome tithed to the Dacians. By the time there is a gap between him and probably the most famous king of the Dacians, Decebalus, and he committed suicide in about 85 AD. He pushed the Romans too hard. The emperor Trajan or Trajan came and conquered Dacia, and took hundreds of tons of gold, which barely scratched the surface of what was there. And the Dacians had a legend that if they wanted to destroy their enemy, they would give them gold. And that's certainly what they did with the Romans. And the Roman Empire proceeded to fall apart as Christianity overrode it. Now, some of my friends there believe that the history to this area might be buried in the Vatican. And I surprised one of my friends. I think I surprised them all, because when I went to a sacred site, I was taking 3 hour hike into the mountains where they had these huge conical inversions into the ground. Nobody knew what they were. The magnetism was anomalous in there. I subsequently found out that these were ancient burial sites where they would bury, and there's these conical things in the mountains, one after the other. I was only able to go into one. That's a whole different story. But the guide who took us there, of course, I was using a translator, and he wanted to check me out before he took me there. So we, had tea and cakes at the Romanian inn that he worked at, and he was very friendly, and I guess I passed his test. But I asked him, I said, before he would take me there, and he asked me, I said, what's the most interesting thing you've seen in this area, the time you've been here? And I was specifically referring to the holy sacred site of the Dacians, Sarmisegetusa. And he said that as soon as communism fell, I guess it fell in December, I guess it must have been as soon as the weather cleared, Pope Paul II and his entourage came to Sarmisegetusa to see what was there. They wanted to see it. So it was recognized by the Vatican as a very significant and important place. So perhaps the Vatican had a role in hiding the information of what took place in this area in the first century. So if we look at the work of Phil Dick, and Phil Dick is certainly working with more than just typical history, his great enlightenment, significant turning point in his life, which he discusses in his book Valis, is that he had a prescription was delivered to him at his house in Orange County, California, and the lady who delivered it had a Vesica Pisces necklace, or a Jesus fish, so to speak. And when he saw that, it induced a drug-induced hallucination where he saw the time period of 70 AD, which was the raiding and razing of the Second Temple of Jerusalem, juxtaposed in 1970s Orange County. And this was, he talked about, this was the realm of King Felix. There is a King Felix historically, but this one seems a bit different than the historical one, because King Felix was a king of peace. He was a king of love. Now, we do have traditions of love and peace in Christianity. I never think of Christianity as love and peace in the way it has been rendered in our history, but this was a story of another dimension. And, you know, the Vesica Piscis was a symbol archaeologically of early Christianity. And the whole idea of it was the other world. There's another world. This world is not the kingdom of heaven. There is another world. Now, what gets happened is they take the human beings, transmute the worst part of this concept and say this world sucks. You know, don't bathe because Romans bathe. You know, don't eat well. You know, be modest, be humble. Well, that's fine. But to the point where you become denigrating of you're not clean, you suffer. Suffering becomes a institution. It becomes a noble thing rather than viewed as a degenerate condition of the physical body and the human and mental body. So you have this embracing of suffering to the detriment of the spirit. And this is a whole culture that is fostered upon us. And and then of course, then comes the killing of the cats. Cats are the feminine energy. Anything identified with the cats or the Moors is killed. And then you have the bubonic plague. So this point of history, and Phil Dick is telling us there's another dimension of love and peace. You do see this manifesting in what are called the Bogomolets from Bulgaria, also known as the Cathars, who migrate from the area of Bulgaria. Keeping in mind, Bulgaria is part of the same ancient culture, the Thracian culture, which comes all the way down from Transylvania and caves. You can walk it underground if you know the routes all the way down to Bulgaria, possibly into Greece. But the Bogomolets people came and migrated to the south of France. So you had the Cathars and the Albigensian Crusade, where the Catholic Church wiped out this other culture of Christianity, which was based upon peace and love instead of what the Catholic Church was based upon. So you have this element. How it involves this area around the cave, I can't say. This is the great mystery that I have to start dealing with. And as they say, there's no history, whether it be from Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. There's just no history here. There's a few people mentioned, and even the Romanians don't have much of a history. I think I can get something out of them, and they will share it with me. But this is something that I'm trying to piece together. What happened during the first century?
So there's a big secret there that we probably don't know about. And you're finding, or people are finding evidence of a massive energetic heat discharge there that probably goes back to that time. You know, it's funny that you brought up earlier too, that our history, we have all these historical timelines, but when we get back to that, zero first century area, things get a little spotty, don't they?
They get very spotty. Ralph Ellis is an author who's done a lot of work on it. Of course, people become very opinionated and distraught over the idea that Christ might not be as they were taught about. The whole concept, it disturbs people. Mm-hmm. It disturbs them, so they're, rabidly for it or rabidly against it. But the emotion is disproportionate when this subject is approached. Certainly we know that the Catholic Church, as it was developed, was to control and manipulate people. The Orthodox Church is very different, but it has also degenerated into an institution of manipulation. And as one person said to me, the purpose of the Orthodox Church was in Romania was to make people forget about their ancient past. Yeah. And certainly, this would be a prime example. So I have a lot of questions and correlations to do with all of this, one thing I will add is that after climbing that mountain, I had a dream the next night, and after being really challenged in the dream state with metal blades and stuff, with certain Chinese martial artists, and I was very irritated by this. Finally, I overcame them, and which pissed them all off, and in the dream. So I was like fighting energies in the dream. Then I went to another dream where I was like Indiana Jones, and he had that staff of Ra, and the light was shining, telling him where to dig for the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
And I was having that dream, and as I dreamed, I said, wow, there's the light. And then the people I was with started to steal the stuff, all the stuff in the tomb. And I said, no, you got to leave everything it is. We got to figure out what time to do this. And I had to escape because some thug was following me. And I couldn't turn my back on him because he was acting like he was just hanging out with me, but he wanted to stab me. I avoided him and escaped him. The next day, after the dream, I was telling the guy who owned the camp, I said, you know, some of my friends, I said, in the museum in Bucharest saw this Dacian gold, 2 female empaths, and they almost fainted. The gold had such an effect on them. He then told me of legends by the cave where every year on Christmas or New Year's, you would see this, he called it an oriflamme. The gold, this like flame, supposedly from the gold, would fly up to the sky. It was just like my dream of the Eye of Ra, Ra meaning sun, only it was going from the ground up, rather from my dream it was going the other way. And so my dream was telling me, connecting me to this phenomena that occurs there. So we went down the hill and met the man who knew about this, and it turned out that his son was the one who'd actually seen this with his wife. He saw this, and he said it would only occur on New Year's, Christmas, or Easter. Not the day after Easter, not the day after Christmas. It would only occur on these holy days. It might have to do with, he said, the phosphorus in bones, if there were bones buried, because they can let off a gas over cemeteries and whatnot. There's a phenomena. I didn't know of this, but I don't think it was that. It's some other phenomena that has gone down in this valley. Well, and when he tried to approach the so-called oriflamme, you couldn't approach it. It would disappear. You could only see it from a certain distance. So this was another mystery of the cave, and that there's now that maybe that's a discharge of a time reactor. I don't know that it is, but it's certainly in sympathy with such things. And we're talking about magic.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And I know I got to take a break here, Peter, but you brought up you had a dream about the Queen and protocol. Now, that sounded very familiar to me. And when I say familiar, and I'll go into the break and leave you guys with this, and we'll discuss this when we come back.
Sounds interesting.
Familiar as in, what if I've heard this protocol before with Queens and a man named John D. and the Enochian magic calls as well. We'll be right back with Peter Moon. I think this rabbit hole is going to go just a little bit deeper.
Great.
Stay with us.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, the Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm. Call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
From the news center outside the city of Chicago in the great Midwest, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt. Here's our headlines. Alien stock is on a collision course with the tiny outpost of Rachel, Nevada in less than a month. The festival, born out of the Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us Facebook phenomena, is scheduled to begin getting everyone parked and situated September 19th, with the event running September 20th until noon on September 22nd. What alien stock actually will entail, though, is still anybody's guess. Hosting several thousand people in the desert will require a lot of waste management. Organizers are still seeking money for essentials such as staff, security, emergency medical services, and portable toilets. Rachel, Nevada has 56 year-round residents, and aside from the Little Alien, a small motel, bar, and restaurant, the nearest infrastructure of any kind is 45 miles away in Ash Springs. So attendees will be on their own for, well, virtually everything. As for water, the festival website claims that there is a well in Rachel, but it's soliciting funds for the equipment needed to process that water for use in hydration stations. Some of the only concrete information involves what you cannot bring to alien stock: glass, drones, non-service animals, and backpacks are prohibited. Without mentioning specifics, the site forbids weapons of any kind being brought into Rachel. If any weapons are found during inspections, it states you will be forced to turn around and leave. So apparently there will be inspections that would require inspectors. Lots of inspectors. Among other warnings, attendees are encouraged to bring plenty of cash for food and other vendors because cellular service is spotty and credit card readers may not work. Source: the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And Europe is sending an alien hunting camera to Mars. The red planet may be a drop in our immense cosmos, but Mars has always been a key place of curiosity when it comes to alien life. And now, a high-tech camera could solve the age-old question, is there or has there ever been life on Mars? In 2021, the European Space Agency's ExoMars rover is due to land on the planet. The Space Agency's camera actually consists of 3 cameras. 2 wide-angle devices will take panoramic images, and a filter wheel will enable them to image in 12 different wavelengths. A high-resolution camera will take further images in full color. A representative from the space agency said, quote, "We cannot wait to see the very first 360-degree panoramic view of Mars that we take, and it certainly will be an image we will cherish for life and probably put on our refrigerator door." Source: CNN. And let's slide right into this useless Stranger Than Fiction fringe fun fact. Captain Crunch's full name is Horatio Magellan Crunch. This has been the Stranger Than Fiction News on the Fringe FM. Again, I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Occult Arcana is a balanced and objective guide to those subjects considered a part of the nature of light and darkness. Addressed in this text is a compilation of material that will provide new perspectives and awaken latent abilities that we all possess. The content herein shall provide magical sustenance for adept and novice alike, and will help strengthen the cornerstone of mystic understanding and alchemical transmutation. If you are interested in this modern grimoire, you can find detailed information and ways to order by visiting www.thesecretteachings.info. Although esoteric and occult studies remain vast, they are rooted within a universal philosophy that is difficult, if not impossible by finite terms, to explain in words. Language places restriction and erects barriers to understandings. By this it is to be understood that there are some things man should consider far too sacred to profane with definition. For these concepts and the manner by which we live our lives, we shall take a note from the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Quote, "Silence is better than unmeaning words." End quote. To get your autographed copy of Occult Arcana today, simply visit www.thesecretteachings.info or email The Secret Teachings at rdgable@yahoo.com.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. We're here with our guest tonight, Peter Moon, and the website, you can go check out the website. I did drop them in the chat room, is skybooks.usa.com. Now, but I want to ask this before I forget, Peter. When you mentioned earlier about you had a dream, and I heard, this is just what came into my mind. You said you had a dream and the Queen was there, and it was something about changing the protocol. Immediately, what came in my mind was the Enochian calls and Enochian magic of John Dee and Edward Kelly when they got together and created that system. Did that ever enter your mind when you were trying to decipher?
Indeed. It did indeed, but I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. It's perhaps good that we do it now. And you said that some people in the chat room were asking about the time travel. Well, I will say one thing. If you study the work of John Dee, and of course John Dee was invoking the angelic hierarchy, and it's important to comment here about John Dee is what he was conversing with. He said, and these angelic spirits told him that these were the same angels that worked with King Solomon. And they gave him a ring. And this ring was the ring of King Solomon. And John Dee had this ring. I think the ring is in the British Museum, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, what the Archangel Michael appeared to John Dee, and John Dee admonished the angel. He says, you weren't on time. And the angel said, time does not move with us, we move time. In other words, these angels were in charge, identifying themselves as being in charge of time. So we're dealing with the control factor of time. David Anderson calls his technology time control technology, controlling time. So what he's embracing on a scientific level, and we can't dismiss the fact that he's opened his mind to spirituality, is in harmony or in sympathy with this angelic hierarchy that is saying we control time. Well, when David starts saying he's controlling time, he's in a realm that is very much in sympathy. I would also tell you, we won't go into the details of it here, but David Anderson will appear in my life in sympathy with magic. Like say, I'm studying the Solomonic keys, the work of John Dee, and David calls me and says, oh yeah, I want to do that podcast. It's almost like if I work at it hard enough, and I don't try this, if I start focusing on stuff, it's almost like I can make him appear, but I don't push that because I'm trying to move in a natural bent. But when people ask about traveling in time, there's a lot of stories of people that will say they did this and did that. And a lot of it leads to, I'm trying to get to the core of it. I'm not trying to say, I went back to 1943 and discovered the bug on the USS Eldridge. These stories, they could be interesting. They could be a waste of time. But I'm trying to get at the core experience. And certainly what Joe just mentioned here is the work of John Dee represents the source code that the universe operates on. So over to you, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's at like the top levels of this stuff. Especially if you look into the Golden Dawn system of magic, once they get into the higher grades, they've got the watchtowers there, and everybody has heard of the watchtowers, and witchcraft and stuff, but that really goes back to those watchtowers, and you see all the little letters and stuff on there, and you can actually peer. There's angelic names all in there, by the way, and all of these angels rule over certain things and elements and stuff, but you can also use these towers or watchtowers to see through space and time, and they look like little squiggly lines, but you're actually looking through dimensions when you look at them. And then and I don't understand all of it totally, but there's so many people that wrote books about it that when I go back and look at it, it took two of them to decipher this thing, right? It took Edward Kelly, it took one scryer and one guy to decipher this stuff. And it's like, well, we do the same things on the internet, when we put in a www. whatever, hypertext transfer protocol, whatever, to get to a certain place. That's what it seems like they're doing. That it has to be done in a certain protocol in order to get to a certain set or group of angels in order to manifest whatever it is they're trying to manifest. And it gets pretty freaky.
So when you mention the protocol, it makes me think of my dream. The queen is waving the protocol. So, and then, I ended up having the dream the next night about this oriflame. And this is the actual energy. It represents the discovery of the Ark of the Covenant and all this and the initiation in the Queen's Chamber. But all of this amounts to the initiation of the pyramid itself and the capstone of the pyramid. And this is this is the missing, this is like the capstone of consciousness where everything all kind of flows together. Now, I should also mention, when we talk about the time travel, that the works of the Romanian author Radu Cinemar, who I published, the first book being Transylvania Sunrise, the fourth book in the series is The Secret Parchment. And this book has something about Romanian history that is very relevant. And I will mention it here because it ties to this area. Although it's a completely independent reference frame from my work with David Anderson and my own adventures into Romania. In this area, this general area, Sarmasegetuza area, somewhere in this area, I can't say, there was a Professor Constantine, and this was said to be, by the author, the greatest state secret in Romania, certainly about 12, 13 years ago. It may still be. But Professor Constantine was an archaeologist who was doing a dig. And I think he was doing this dig shortly after communism had fallen, because they were now opening up the sites. And one day, at the end of the day, the contractor's son, who was, helping with the digging, they were putting the tools away. And there was this little pit, I guess, where they had the tools, and they discovered this underground entrance. So the young man and the Professor Constantine went down into this. They saw there was this whole underground area, and they kept going down deeper and deeper, and it just went on and on and on. And finally, they got to these tunnels where it became gold, quartz crystal and gold. Finally, it became virtually solid gold. Now, this might sound far out, but everyone in Romania and those who are geologists who pay attention to Romania know that this area is filled with gold. It is loaded with gold, and one of the biggest gold deposits in the world. So the Romans took a couple 100 tons of gold from this area, but they touched the tip of the iceberg. Now, this gold is as a property of superconsciousness. So just as if you want to use electricity, you use copper. A better conductor than copper, more expensive, is silver. a better conductor than silver is gold. So gold will have an effect just being in the gold. This is why it was so regenerative for me to be there for 3 days in nature, because I'm not only in nature, I'm over beds of gold. Now, Professor Constantine went down further and further. Eventually, they came to this artifact, which was like a bed of gold, and it looked like something for laying down. I concluded after looking at this, reading this, that this was a bed for remote viewing or going out of the body. You sit down on the gold, lay down on the gold, and you go into super consciousness. A real good investment for gold, if you wanted to, would be to put it and lay on it, rather than to wear it, to hoard it. It would facilitate the super consciousness. Now, there was inscriptions on this, and the inscriptions was KRIO space SAL space, and then I think it was MOX or MO. It's in the book. I don't remember. They said that this KR referred to chronos or time, and but they translated it as this is where the worlds unite. This was 4 universities. This is where the worlds unite. Now, I took the etymology or phonetics of this, and Creo, this is time. 10 is 10. Eo is also the the pronunciation of hailing God, or Pan, Eopan, that Jack Parsons used to use.
Yep.
Creo is time, KR is time, but Zalmas refers to Zalmoxes. And they didn't mention this in the book, although my translator picked it up and so did I. Zalmoxes is the god of the patron god of Romania, sometimes etymologically defined as the leaping god. And per tradition, Zalmoxes was initiated inside the earth, in the inner earth, by the indigenous spirits of Romania known as the Solomonari. And he was transformed in 4 years of study from a human being into a god. And Zalmoxes is said to be the inspiration for the Zoroastrian religion, the Judaic religion, and the Christian religion, and perhaps some others. He's an ancient god. He also represents the age of Gemini, and the swastika is the symbol for Zalmoxes. But basically, in the book, this is where the worlds unite. So then they traveled deep into more gold caves, where they eventually got to called the throne room. And there were these huge thrones that were suitable for huge people, giant type people. And they had hieroglyphic, scrolls embedded in gold on the walls. And there was a portal which the young man looked into, became sort of in a trance looking at it. They saw a planet. It was like open space, a planet that looked sort of like the Earth with the clouds, only it was more orange. I think orange and yellow rather than blue and green. And the young man fell into the pit, fell into space, and Professor Constantine got frightened. He came back up to the Earth, and I don't know if everything he was seeing was in the physical reference frame or was an interdimensional reference frame. Certainly the portal was interdimensional, but he got scared, ran back, I guess called the security in Bucharest. They came, and Cesar Brad, who was the mentor of Radu Cinnabar, was able to interview Professor Constantine for about a half an hour before security came and took him away. And Professor Constantine was never heard of again. Although he was a real character, I was shown where his house was. And of course, I was told that, this guy's a professor. His name was Constantine. Okay, it's no secret in the area, but he did disappear. So this was a great state secret. And in any case, it's not so much of a secret now because it's been published. But this area is the general area we're talking about. So he's saying, Radu is saying that this area is where there is a center point of all time. It's Preston Nichols used to say that Montauk was the center of time. It was the center of time, reference point. And now this book is saying this is the center of time. Well, Preston Nichols would also tell you that the center of the galaxy is zero time. So all these points are connected. It would also be the core of a black hole, which is discussed in the most recent book, the fifth book in the series, Inside the Earth, the second tunnel, which goes into the whole anatomy of a black hole and how all things derive from a black hole. Planets, cosmological structures derive from a black hole. But in any case, this is getting at the core aspects of time, and you could even say God in a sense, in getting at the core, the key points. And this is what I try to go for. I'm not necessarily trying to go back to, 1953 when I was born and have my parents treat me a little differently or resolve this situation. I have no desire to change anything in my own life. And, even if I was to get an advantage, whether it be financially, physically, I don't want to change.
So what is it about Montauk that we missed? I mean, we've been told that Montauk is this, project where people were kidnapped and brainwashed and emotionally messed with. Even in Stranger Things, they kind of show. I mean, that whole show was supposed to be called Montauk, right? But you're saying that
Montauk, but I told them, I wrote them a certified letter and said, you're walking a thin line there, basically. And I offered them if they want to use the story, we can negotiate. They want to use the name, and they changed the name. But
they didn't even want to mess with you about it, huh? Huh.
No, they were doing their own fiction story, and they've missed the whole story using some of the premise. But I should tell the audience right now, tomorrow evening on the CW channel, they will be doing a documentary on Mysteries Decoded. It's on the Montauk Project. I participated in it in April of this year, and the previous documentary I participated in, they omitted me entirely from it. They wouldn't even say my name. And they wouldn't mention David Anderson, which I had showed them the patent application for the time reactor. I did it again in this one. I think they're going to show it. They did show me in the trailer saying, so there's a time machine. You're saying there's a time machine. And it looks like they're going to approach it and deal with it, sincerely. So this is tomorrow night, Tuesday night. It's 8 or 9 o'clock on the CW channel, and you can watch it online if you don't have a television. So this is a big thing that's happening tomorrow. But as far as Montauk is concerned, what did they miss at Montauk? Well, I think what they were doing at Montauk is they were playing with the human mind and the capacity of the human mind. And so much of it was based upon inducing the human mind to behave differently with radio waves, subjecting people to radio waves and, amplifying their thoughts and minds, using talented people. But so much of the talent was tried to arrive at by hurting people, because Aldous Huxley in his book The Doors of Perception says there's ways to get it, extrasensory perception. One is through sensory deprivation, and another one is through basically pain, torture.
Right.
I forget, I think he lists 4 of them, but sensory deprivation, like a flotation tank, or but he also mentions, torture. So when you, beat the hell out of somebody, take 100 people and beat the hell out of them to near death, many of them will die, but a small percentage of them might kind of wake up. Now, I have friends that were sexually violated at a young age, and they would go outside of their brain. They couldn't exist in their existing, mind-body structure, and they would go into other parts of their brain where they would develop highly sensitive or paranormal ability. But it was a direct result of the abuse. And often, sometimes they're able to cope with this and have a normal life. But this is what happened to them, a relatively normal life. But at Montauk, this is what they were doing. They were inducing people to suffer and thereby open up their paranormal portals. So this is not, anything that's healthy or good. But what were they missing at Montauk? They were going for the gusto. They were trying to control and manipulate. And if you control and manipulate the currency, basically, at some point you're going to control time. Like this character, Jeffrey Epstein, was trying to seed the human race. You're dealing with a control that is madness. It's madness. So you see that people are trying to control. It becomes like a manic activity. So that's what they were missing at Montauk. They were also missing something else at Montauk technologically. They could not, according to Preston Nichols, maintain enough power to keep the portal open. David Anderson has solved this scientifically, how to keep the portal open, how to do this. What he's doing with the technology, where he is engaged with the so-called angelic hierarchy, I can't speak for. As they say, he calls me when he's ready to talk to me, not the other way. He did say hello to me while I was in Romania. He generally pays attention to what I'm doing there. He was radioing in pretty much every night and talking to the kids in the ham radio tent. And I was listening to them and talking about the importance of radio waves. I didn't really engage him.
So some people are asking about David Anderson through text and stuff. Is there no way to find his research or information or his message on the web anywhere?
Yes. Recently, his website had gone down. You can go to his website, andersoninstitute.com, which has been modified and updated to a small degree. But it's basically mostly as it was. I think it went down last year sometime, but it's now back up and you can go to his website. Now, what I did is after have lectures, I attended lectures in Romania where he was giving lectures that eventually, he put up on the web. It took me 6 years to break down. And this was using the dark room. I was going into complete darkness, coming out and reading his website, going back into darkness, which is a Qigong technique that I learned. And I was able to break his stuff down and put it into an article that he was very pleased with. He says, nobody's had the patience to break this stuff down. Can I please use this when I go to lecture in universities? I said, well, certainly. Well, certainly you can, because you're the one that taught it to me. And then I did a series of videos later in the year, the Time Travel Theory Explained, which are free videos that anybody can watch if they go to timetraveleducationcenter.com. That will enable you to perhaps better understand what he put there. But what I learned was that when you slow time down, the more you slow it down, the further you will go into the future. The faster you speed it up in a self-contained field, the further you will go into the past. This makes the what do you call it, the indicator in the H.G. Wells Time Machine movie where he shows like a dial or whatever it is going back to certain years. It makes it a plausible idea, because the faster it's moving, the further you're going back into time. And of course, I figured this out on his website, putting 2 and 2 together. And I asked him that. He says, yes, that's true. He said, that is true. Slower you go, the further you go into the future, because you're changing the juxtaposition of this self-contained field. You're changing its space. So it's moving into the future. There's a lot of questions that are presented, like how, like if you could go back into time and you want to go see Napoleon, well, how the hell do you focus on Napoleon? I mean, this guy lived for whatever years. I don't know how many years he lived, whether it was 40 or 50, but how do you zero in on certain events? And can you go from the time he, studied with the Masons, the time he married Josephine, or whatever, all these antics he was involved in? How do you put all that together? It's kind of impossible. You're going to go, oh, here's where he got poisoned. Here's where he escaped from Elba. Here's where he lost at Waterloo. How do you put all that together? The only thing that puts it together is the technology described by Radu Sinamar, whereas in the current book, which is not published yet, Forgotten Genesis, he's talking about but this is indicative of all the technology he writes about. It's intuitive. It's intuitive heuristic technology to where he puts on a visor and he's looking in 3D holographic form, and whatever he's looking at is feeding off of his own mind. And so his own questions are being answered. So if he was looking into the history of Napoleon, he would see what they would present to him, what he wanted to know, what he needed to know. And so watching it, how accurate it is another question. I think the human mind, I think you could put a person in a drug, a hallucinogenic drug that would open up his mind, and he could pretty much tell you the whole history of Napoleon, even if he's never read anything about it. I think the human mind has that capability to tap into the Akasha, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I was just fixing to ask that, if that's the same thing.
Stuff out. Yeah, it relates to all of that. But the question is, okay, so we have these beautiful paradigm offered to us by Radu Sinamar saying, oh, there's all this heuristic technology. Well, I had the opportunity when I was in California to put on some these goggles that are like augmented reality or virtual reality. I forget which one it was, where you're looking in a 3D set and you're seeing, and it scared the hell out of my wife because she put it on and she was underwater and this huge blue whale swam up to her and it scared the hell out of her. I put on the goggles and I saw the blue whale too, but it didn't frighten me because I could see the pixels. I recognized the pixels. I wasn't as, empathic about it as she was. And I mean, but it was impressive. It's like you're underwater, you got all these fish swimming around you. And so the technology, this was augmented reality. So you're wearing goggles. If, this is the next step before it would eventually be holographic technology, which according to Radu already exists in the Pentagon and elsewhere. We just don't have access to it. We're not ready for it. And it's very important to realize that the time, the past, the future, and the present all exist simultaneously. So if the technology exists in the future, it's capable of, being in the present. So it's a question of accessing the future, accessing the past, and becoming more in the present. It's a very optimistic outlook that all of this presents, and I tend to try and project in that direction. Certainly go ahead.
When your mind really started opening up to this stuff, when you really started seeing like, man, what in the hell is going on here? Was it when you had your experiences with Hubbard and Scientology that you started to really look at this big picture? When did this happen for you?
Well, you see, the stuff with Hubbard was all about, initially, I wanted to discover what was in my mind, because the book Dianetics, says you can access these hidden portions of your mind, and certainly it did. And I got unexpected joy out of relieving psychosomatic trauma, problems that I had physically, like with a sore throat. I had bad sore throat from time to time.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but I relieved the condition. And I can't tell you the amount of discharge, laughter, joy. And yeah, did I go out of my body? Yes, I did. In fact, I couldn't be counseled anymore because of this condition. It would affect the E-meter, so they put me through a process of, it was called the exteriorization rundown, where you would go back into all the times you involuted or inverted into the body or crashed into it. And these could be, times when you failed a test or you had to cram for a test and it bothered you, or more back to pseudo imaginary incidents on the whole track of time when, you crashed an airplane or you were in some other situation where you just completely introverted into your body and your attention was completely, and you would release things. So, the next thing I know, I'm, riding my bicycle home and feel like I'm floating. And then I'm going by the cemetery. And I tell you, going by the cemetery was not something that I really enjoyed. I would have been a little off-put by it. And here I'm going by the cemetery and I'm feeling completely free and, feel like waving at the spirits. I said, oh, there's spirits over there. That's fine. I mean, the whole feeling of attitude and spirits were not something I would have even understood or recognized, a year earlier. You could just kind of feel what was there. So these were the joys of early Scientology, in the first year. And after about a year, I completely, it was this man. He later became the president of the Church of Scientology, Heber Jentz. He used to sing this song about this dog that, died and went out of its body. And I was listening to this song for the first time, and I was up out of the body, looking down at myself and my friend Doug, who was right next to me. And he's still my friend to this day. And I'm looking down, I'm looking from the ceiling. I'm like, shit, this is real. Everything Hubbard talked about was real. Going out of my body.
Yes.
This was fantastic.
Yes, sir.
But here's the interesting thing about Heber Jentz. Heber Jentz is a prisoner to this day in the Church of Scientology. He's had a horrendous life. He's had the shit beat out of him. He's in a virtual prison.
So they really do that, like some of the documentaries show where they put people through certain excruciating things in Scientology, or is that something?
Well, Heber was a kind of a popular figure, and it said that David Miscavige, the head of Scientology, was very jealous of Heber and would literally, slug him. And he's been basically in a virtual prison. And he's quoted as saying to his brother, he says, I'm never going to get the hell out of here. And he's been sick. I mean, it's a tragic life that this man has led. And the thing is, he was a facilitator of one of my greatest experiences in my life, just by singing his song aesthetically, because he was there doing a presentation with the Celebrity Center. He was on a tour to the town I was in Davis. And I remember walking down the street with him, telling of, his experience. And this was years ago, but I mean, I haven't seen the man in, 36 years or whatever it's been. And, but I'm saying is, here was like, he believed in Scientology. He stayed all this, and he's had a tragic life. And I have
That's
not.
terrible, man.
But it's see, this is the thing is, it's like, his ex-wife, Karen De La Carriere, she's she's appeared on the Leah Remini show, and she's got a Facebook site, and she does a lot of videos. She's one of Scientology's biggest adversaries, and she lost her son over this. It was a son her and Heber had. It's a tragic story, and but as I say, I was I was very fortunate, And I was also using intelligence and certain access I had to Hubbard that maybe they didn't have, just to sort of see things. But it's like, okay, this man was a, and it's not the only time. Somebody's a vital cog in your life, and they've sparked you. It doesn't mean, your joy is not their joy. We're different people. So this is like, I feel bad for him, but I know that he made certain choices that were not in his best interest.
Well, that's the thing too. I wanted to kind of discuss with you about while you're here. And I know it's, we've talked quite a bit about time travel and the mind and just how deep this thing goes. But with all the people that are wanting to get into the occult right now, and I mean, to me right now, it could be just my perception, but to me, it's bigger than ever right now. I think it's important to stress just how careful a person is, whether you join a society or you don't join a society, because this is like some pretty heady stuff. You can get lost. Like you mentioned, I mean, to circle back around what you were saying at the beginning of the show, you can get lost in the depths of your own mind or this, what's called occult science to begin with. In a bad way.
Can. You certainly can. But I think it's very important to stress here. And this is like, Aleister Crowley, he channeled the Book of the Law in 1904.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was, he said that he didn't understand this and that somebody would come along later and decode it. Well, I haven't actually met him physically. His name is John Paroli. He was involved in the OTO, and he decoded this stuff, and he explained it to me. I have it in my book, The Montauk Book of the Living, the decoding of the Book of the Law. And basically, I can't explain it here, but basically, it's all about the relationship between 5 and 6, and 5 and 6, and how this is related to the pentagon and the hexagram, and how it relates to the tree of life. Basically, what the Book of the Law, the great mystery, is that it is showing how DNA, it's describing DNA and the helix of the DNA. And this is being done before science had discovered DNA. So what this teaches you in a short idea is that DNA is the tree of life. The tree of life is DNA. The tree of, more specifically, the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, is an effort to render DNA in a two-dimensional form. You will see three-dimensional references of the tree of life on YouTube if you look hard enough. But basically, the Kabbalistic tree of life is DNA. And so and of course, all of the occult is based upon the Kabbalistic tree of life.
That's right. The Western side of it, for sure. Yes.
Well, yeah, we're talking about the Western, but the thing is that, so, when you're studying DNA or you're studying the tree of life, this is how life iterates. It's how life regenerates. Mm-hmm. And in any form of life, whether it be a beaver, a bear, a zebra, all of them are emphasizing different points on the tree of life. Some are more exaggerated than others. Some animals are more Venusian. Some animals are more Martian.
Right.
Some animals are more Jupiterian or Jovian. And this goes to the characteristics of human beings. Some of us manifest beauty. Some of us manifest athleticism. Some of us manifest intelligence. Some of us manifest emotions. So it's like I obviously want to balance. And this goes back to we were talking about the secret chiefs. The secret chiefs are the 12 signs of the zodiac. Each sign of the zodiac is associated with a planet. So, the secret chiefs are inside of our own DNA. And it's like, talk about unlocking the DNA, unlocking the mystery. It's like, why do you walk the labyrinth? The labyrinth is the pathway of the brain, and it amounts to what in time travel is called a closed time-like curve, which is explained in detail in the free videos at the Time Travel Education Center. Closed time-like curve is a very misunderstood term in physics. And in fact, the person who brought it to the forefront more than anybody was Kurt Gödel. And Kurt Gödel was a friend of Einstein who Einstein admired greatly. I think he said that the only reason he kept working at the Institute for Advanced Studies in his later years is so he could walk home with Kurt Gödel and have interesting conversations. Kurt Gödel, however, was institutionalized twice. He was obsessed with the occult, and he was his understanding of space-time physics was disconcerting to himself. So, you know, it's can be considered a tough road to hoe. But if you keep it simplistic and keep within your own structure of your own DNA, you know, just.
So you're saying the tree of now. I've studied this myself a little bit, right? So now I know where the pentacle lies on the tree as well as the hexagram. It's centered in Tiferet, right? But but you're saying that this thing is not just showing us an esoteric principle of rising through, you know, the elements and the planets and everything, but it's also showing a fundamental thing like DNA too. And see, that's fascinating to me, the tree of life, how it just keeps unraveling like that.
Yeah, but the tree of life is a mental effort to understand what's already going on inside of you. And it's like you're writing out a graphic representation and you're trying to say, oh, this goes here and that goes there. And that's all well and fine. But, you know, it's like trying to put an astrology chart of your life and figuring it all out. In fact, it embraces astrology. But the thing is, it's like, this is the mind trying to understand itself by doing these renditions. And, you know, the tree of life and the people that write it, they're doing the best they can, you know, and basically, you know, you can do the best you can by, you know, trying to understand yourself. But when you're walking the labyrinth of the mind, you're going to come back to the beginning. The whole idea of a closed time-like curve is when, and this is from the general theory of relativity by Einstein, when you start going in a direction, put a straight, you know, shoot an arrow, so to speak, metaphorically, it's going to come around back on itself.
See, I've been telling everybody that for the longest time. Look, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, all this stuff is based on the construct of the tree of life. It's all based on that construct. Freemasonry is like one of the things where it's just really not prevalent unless you read like Albert Pike or whatever. But it's all based on that construct. Manly P. Hall talks about it. And you know what you just said there is funny because I've talked to the heads of some of these hermetic orders and societies and stuff, and they all understand like basic fundamentals of magic when it comes to elemental things and planetary things. But when you get up to the big stuff, like crossing the abyss, alchemy, things like that, they don't agree. They do not agree. Across the board, they're all trying to figure this out. Well, no, the secret chiefs are actually physical people on the earth. Well, no, they're not. They're masters in the hidden realm. Or alchemy is actually a physical stone. Well, no, it's not. It's an energetic stone in the body. And you're like, well, that's cool that they're all trying to figure this stuff out. But you're saying that we end up curving back around, back to square every time we do this.
This is the alpha and omega is exactly. So you could say when in the Bible Jesus says, I am Alpha and Omega, he's basically saying I'm the beginning and the end. I'm a closed time-like curve. And this correlates with what Preston Nichols said, you know, the original timeline is the Christ consciousness. It's all becomes what semantics do you want to apply to it. And when people get into arguments or opinions about these things you're talking about, like, you know, whether it be alchemy or, you know, the secret chiefs, it's like, you know, this is just individual opinions and perceptions with limited minds, no matter how enlightened they are, whether it's my mind or your mind. It's like, you know, enlightenment is within. It doesn't have to be validated or discussed with other people. I mean, of course, it's nice for people who are finding their way to get a validation of something. That's always nice. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel like right. And this was a big problem in Scientology. Why are people listening to what other people say so much? Why do they put so much stock in what the herd is thinking? This is one of the biggest problems, is that you have this herd mentality that, we can't think this unless Stephen Hawking says it is so.
Yeah.
We can't think it unless, the government endorses it.
Unless somebody in some type of authoritative figure validates what I'm thinking or believing.
Yeah, exactly. The authoritative figure. And this is quite this is a deferral of your own opinion and your own responsibility. I'm going to go with what authority says. It's like saying, I'm going to go with Johnson & Johnson because they're a reputable company on the stock exchange. I'm going to go with their medication, despite the fact that they just made a huge settlement for something. I don't know what it was about, but the name Johnson & Johnson, it means something to people, and has been a good stock over the years. But it's like people defer because it's an evacuation or a vacating responsibility to say I'm gonna listen to what the doctor says. And, you can be given very bad advice by a doctor because he's, I've even had doctors tell me, we have to tell you this. This might not be my opinion, but if I don't tell you this, I'll lose my license. It's like they're under threat of authority.
Right.
And some of them will be honest and open with you. So it's like, and people will defer to the doctor because the doctor is authority. And you have to use your own mind and your own responsibility. And this is a big problem that people have. Some person recently said they saw the patent, but they wanted to see where it was on the patent rolls. And it's the patent of David Anderson's time reactor was sequestered. So I did refer her to Wikipedia, the U.S. Secrecy Act. The Secrecy Act, which means patents that are of critical, security to the United States of America are basically, not viewable. They're sequestered. It doesn't use the word sequester, but it essentially does. They can tie up any patent they want, and that's the U.S. Secrecy Act.
Yeah, for sure.
So how can you can't get corroboration from the government. You have to invest in your own common sense, and you don't have to believe it. You don't have to disbelieve it. It's just information that's been presented to you. You don't have to make a judgment. This doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. You're being presented with this information that there is a character called David Anderson and that he has made a patent. He has made a patent application for a time reactor, that he's been involved with it. I've seen a videotape of an early prototype for it. That's just information. I might have more information that tells me all of this stuff is more real than the person just learning about it, but it's just information, and you put it there. You don't have to make a judgment on whether it's real or exists. The fact that it's being talked about and talked about in a coherent fashion is, of course, an indication that there's more to learn about all this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. What I want to do, since we only got a few minutes left with you here, I was going to take this break, and when we come back, I want to look at, your books and just kind of go over, when we come back, what they talk about. We don't have to give away the books, but, just what these books specifically talk about. And if you guys need a reference, that's the good website to go to is skybooks.usa.com. Also, timetraveleducationcenter.com. We got a few minutes left here with Peter, and we'll be right back.
So call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
How you doing today, guys? This is Garrett Lee.
And this is Randy Warner.
We're the hosts of Healers and Hellraisers, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
You're listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Bouval, Lon Malo Duquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Get the Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health naturally. Again, log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com and feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at getthetea.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves strip bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25 years shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Hello, this is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on the Fringe FM.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Roop. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Deep down the rabbit hole with Peter Moon tonight. This is a fascinating second show when it comes to government projects, cover-ups, and quote conspiracies. You know, it's this, like I'll say again, this is not something that Lighting the Void specifically talks about, but I think it's time that we go down these roads. And tonight we've been talking about time travel, the mind, and specifically your trips in Romania and some of the stuff that you discovered out there, which I find really fascinating. And Peter, I wanted to go over some of your books here that you got on your website, which is at Skybooks USA, and you've wrote or been involved with quite a few texts, though, haven't you? Not just a couple of books.
Oh no, there's several books. I think I published 21 or 22, and the recent book that might be of great interest to people here is newly published this year, called the Silver Anniversary Edition of the Montauk Project. That's available on the Skybooks website. You can probably also find it on Amazon and certainly on Kindle and other avenues like Nook and iTunes. The Silver Anniversary of the Montauk Project it has the time reactor patent in it. It has my meeting and discussion with David Anderson, because the Montauk, of course, it starts off, the first part of the book is the Montauk Project verbatim as it was originally published in the original version. You can also buy the original version if you want, just that alone. But not only did I reprint the original version in this book, I supplement it with anecdotes and circumstances that are in italics at the end of many of the chapters to corroborate or verify what Preston Nichols said and tell a few things that couldn't be said at the time it was written for security reasons, such as the company that Preston worked for, Airborne Instruments Laboratory, or AIL. Preston did not want to mention that in the original book. And there are other aspects. But at the end of that's part one. Part two is when I actually go into the investigation of the Montauk Project. There was two investigations. One was the journalistic investigation, which was conducted by both myself and Preston Nichols to corroborate or establish that the Montauk Project did in fact exist. And we were able to basically corroborate the secrecy behind it, the conspiracy behind it. We actually got the base changed from a hidden clandestine place into a state park. And that was the direct result of our efforts. The New York State park director, Bernadette Castro, had ordered, the tape that Preston had done, ordered it from Skybooks, and she began to make changes in the park to where now anybody can go to the park. That was a direct result of our investigation and publication of this. But there was also another investigation. Now, the only thing we could not prove in that investigation was the time travel. That was all anecdotal stuff. But what was proven was my encounter with Dr. David Anderson. So that establishes that time travel is a real scientific plausibility fact. And to what degree they did it, we would never have met Dr. Anderson if it wasn't for me and Preston writing the Montauk Project. So we kind of covered all bases. The other investigation was an occult investigation. So, and these two intertwined, because by following one, it led me to the other. The occult investigation led me to the discovery that there were pyramids at Montauk, which did appear in a book. And they're in the book. The picture of the pyramids are in the book. And this was the ancient sacred ground of the Montauk Pharaohs, who were the royal tribe, Native American tribe of Long Island. And this is one of the biggest problems. This Montauk Project energy will not be cleared until the pharaohs are recognized as an indigenous tribe that are the rightful owners of the Montauk base. So this is this is a way to get started, the Montauk Project Experiments in Time. I wrote a book, Montauk Revisited, which went into the occult investigation, and it's kind of summarized in the Montauk, the Silver Anniversary. There was the third book was Pyramids of Montauk, Explorations in Consciousness, which went into the whole legacy of the pyramids. That was followed up by Encounter in the Pleiades, which goes into Preston's experiences of being taken to the Pleiades and his UFO contacts. It's called An Inside Look at UFOs. And he goes into experiences with abductions and alien craft. I also add to the book with some of my experiences. The next book was The Black Sun, Montauk's Nazi-Tibetan Connection, which was the first book to publish some of the pictures of Nazi UFOs in America. The first actual book, which I had gotten from Jan Udo Holy or Jan von Helsing, who had published them in a German book. And of course, there's a whole interesting connection between Montauk, Germany, and Tibet. And then I went into even deeper stuff. The Montauk Book of the Dead, the Montauk Book of the Living. These are tomes. Synchronicity in the Seventh Seal, over 400 pages, that goes into some of the Enochian magic and all sorts of incredible occult stuff. And then there's the Transylvania series, which begins with the Transylvanian Sunrise. People can start there. That's a book about this chamber that was discovered beneath the Romanian Sphinx with holographic technology and a projection hall that would show the, history of the Earth in holographic form, and with 3 tunnels in that projection hall, which go to similar chambers in Egypt, Tibet, and Baghdad, and into the inner Earth itself. This is a whole series of books. So I have been kept very busy. This has been my life profession since 1992. Studying the Montauk Project took over my life. So when you say people are supposed to find a career that, fulfills them or that they enjoyed, and this is what I was fortunate enough and able to do. So I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And it's what I do for a living. And it's brought me to Romania. And the stuff I'm talking about earlier about Choclovina Cave is sort of on the cutting edge of what I'm hitting up against in my research.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that too quite a bit, because I noticed that before the show, a lot of people that your followers were asking about, hey, I thought you were in Romania. What were you doing there? And that's I think time travel is fantastic, honestly. And I think your version of what you're talking about especially on your website when it comes to time travel, makes more sense to me than anything. But this whole story of what's going on and with your studies and research there and the caves and stuff, I really hope that you figure out whatever it is you're looking for, man, and write about it, or at least let us know, or keep letting us know, because there's definitely
I don't know what I'm
there.
not looking for anything. I'm just looking to figure out, well, how does this puzzle fit together? What is it telling me? It's like I don't have a preconceived notion. I have ideas. And of course, this is how my research has gone from the beginning. First I find the pyramids. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
And then I have to write a whole book to figure it out. And I pretty much have figured it out. And as much as I figured it out, it's like, well, yeah, we got Camp Hero changed into a state park, but we haven't gotten it changed into a native reservation. In other words, that's a much bigger call, because the government, see, the one thing that Romania has that America doesn't have, and according to what Radu has said, the books, the Americans are generally very indignant about Romania. Why? We're the greatest country in the world. Why do you have this remarkable area full of so much esoteric knowledge? Well, there's the thing is, the Romanians, whatever corruption they have in their government, and certainly they do, the Romanian people have never lost their indigenous area. They are the indigenous people of their area. So they have their own heritage. In America, the government has superimposed itself and displaced the native peoples with great disrespect, and even performed Holocaust on the Native Americans, going back to George Washington. So what we have is sacred America. We have a superimposition on our native country. So this is a big issue with America. And until this is recognized, America is just one big Jeffrey Epstein monster situation.
Yeah.
And conspiracy is the conspiracy theories that are so, people want to defame. They are a symptom, not a cause. The FBI has said these conspiracy theories are dangerous to national security. And they also acknowledged that part of the reason is that the government has indulged in corruption. But the conspiracy theories are a symptom of the fact that we cannot trust our authorities 100%.
I agree with that. I agree. That it is the biggest, topic right now. When people ask me, hey, I want to do a podcast, what should I do about? If you want a whole bunch of downloads to start with, it's conspiracy, number one. And it's because you're so right, man. It's not because it's a cliche or a fad. It's because deep down, we all know something's going on bigger than what we're being told. And we just don't trust them anymore. Flat out.
Well, it's a symptom. It's a symptom, and it's going to persist because it's got to give. And you can even check the astrology on it. It's like astrologically, as Pluto moves out of Capricorn and into Aquarius, this is going to occur in about 3 or 4 years approximately. I don't know exactly when. I think around 2023, and you're going to have, this is the advent of Star Trek technology, where things are going to be, well, we've already got cell phone, but it's going to be, we're moving into that era of the Starship Enterprise, so to speak, per astrology. And one thing about the Starship Enterprise, if we can take that as any sort of model, is they had a lot of, they didn't seem to have problems with poverty and currency and all the nonsense that we're dealing with economic, depravity, homeless people, starving people. The Star Trek Culture Federation seemed to have figured that out as far as we know. So maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, science fiction is becoming science reality in a lot of different ways. One question I wanted to ask for you about, because I'm just curious of what your opinions are on CERN, right? Why they have so much occult symbolism around what they're doing. What is your thoughts on that?
I've never paid much attention to CERN because there's so much chatter about it and hysteria that I just, I just kind of shut off when people start talking about CERN.
I totally understand.
I mean, listen, it's like there's too much going on with 9/11 for me to get involved with 9/11. There's too much going on with the JFK assassination. That's still festering. One of the most informed persons of that is Judith Baker. You want to look up her Facebook site. Judith Baker was the girlfriend of Lee Harvey Oswald, and she's written books. Me and Lee, she's one of the most knowledgeable people. She knew David Ferrie, all these people. So I mean that stuff. I have to focus on what I focus on. I think a lot of stuff gets said about CERN that is just chatter.
Sure.
And I actually heard Michio Kaku talking today on C-SPAN, talking about how they were supposed to have all that here, but the Congress wouldn't fund it. He says they funded $1 billion to dig a hole, and then they funded another $1 billion to fill the hole, but they wouldn't do the project. I think because what they said is, they said, will we discover the God? Will we discover God by doing this, the God particle? And of course, the people were reluctant to say that they would. So they said, no, well, you're not going to discover God. And they basically killed it. And then the whole thing went to Switzerland, where they did discover the so-called God particle, the Higgs boson. So,
I see what you're saying. Some of this stuff gets so overwhelming. There's just way too big of there's rabbit holes in themselves when you go down that. And I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, because honestly, before I looked at your stuff, I had no inclinations of ever doing a show on time travel, even talking to anybody about it, because some of the stuff has been so ridiculous of what I've heard in the past. Right.
Well, the mind is challenged by it, and then there's this effort to get attention, tremendous amount of effort, competitive attention. I got a lot of attention, relatively speaking, when I came on the scene in 1992, 93. I mean, I mushroomed. And then all of a sudden, as time goes on, every Tom, Dick, and Harry becomes an author, and a lot of people have a lot of information, and it kind of pollutes the stream of information. And certainly it modified my audience considerably. So I get, and then some of the more bigger media outlets and alternative media will ban me. They don't like me. They want to have people that are mediocre. Yet it was a ballerina that pointed out to me once that this world loves mediocrity. And you see this in the movie Amadeus, where the composer Salieri is exalted beyond Mozart. And Salieri knows that he's largely inferior to Mozart. And the Emperor Franz Joseph proclaims Salieri the best composer. It's kind of like, this is what we live in, a world of let's promote the mediocre. Let's give Michio Kaku a Nobel Prize, and let's have us all dress up in tuxedos. Meanwhile, we ignore the work of Dr. David Anderson. Not that he's looking for a Nobel Prize, but people look to a Nobel Prize as authority. And this proclamation is, and this is not how,
it's not how it should be done. And look, I can relate to that in the UFO field too. I know 2 or 3 people that, should be getting notoriety for their research and what they've done, but we tend to stay in the mediocre and with the story and with what's popular, with what I guess is with what's more fantasizing about instead of the real research. But I'm hoping that'll change, and I see a change coming. And speaking of which, I mean, this is a big change for this show, and I really want to thank you for coming on this show. It's been a really awesome conversation, very deep, very thought-provoking conversation. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, it was great talking to you, and we'll talk again sometime.
Absolutely. And if you guys want to go check out the websites, you definitely can. SkybookedUSA.com is one of the websites. Also, timetraveleducationcenter.com if you want to look at this whole time travel thing. There's free videos on there that explains everything. That's at timetraveleducationcenter.com, and also digitalmontauk.com. And we will put those links there for the archives and all the podcast listeners as well. And tomorrow night, we're going to be discussing what are energetic vortexes. Are they really real? Are they in the human body? Where are they on the planet? We're really going to look into what's called metaphysical ecology with Jap Van Etten, and it's going to be an interesting conversation tomorrow night as well. And I also want to say that please don't copy the show without written permission. And the main music was by Chronox, and Guitar Man was by Bundy. And I want to thank Pacho, Don, Lady Ann, and Dennis, Eric Markham, and the program director, Jeremy Scott, as well. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, same time, same channel. Love y'all. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.